Over to you, Mike.
Thank you so much. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're calling in from. My name is Mike Waldron. I'm the CMO of Tenovos. And in the next 20 minutes, we're going to be talking all about data and the types of data that dam managers should be thinking about when it comes to supporting their brand, creative, and marketing teams. So I am absolutely delighted to be joined by Shelley Schippert, who is the Director of Global Marketing Content and Information at Brown Forman. Now, Shelley, some of the folks on the call may not be familiar with your company, but I bet they're familiar with some of your brands. So could you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your roles and responsibilities within Brown Forman?
Yes, my name is Shelley Schippert. I am the Director of Global Marketing Content and Information for Brown Forman. In essence, that means I manage both of our DAM and our PIM. I've been with Brown Forman for about 26 years and managing digital assets for Brown Forman for around 20 years. And as Mike said, you may not be familiar with Brown Forman, but I'm sure some of you are familiar with our brands.
Thank you, Shelley. And I'm very familiar with them, which is why I love working with you so much. But today, the star of the show is not Jack Daniels. The star of the show is data. And we're not just talking about metadata here, friends. We want to uncover what data our brand, creative, and marketing teams are looking for to make them more productive at their jobs, but also improve the performance of the content that they're creating. Because your brand teams, they're creating a lot of content and they want to understand what content is actually impacting engagement and driving business growth. They also want to improve content reuse and eliminate the time wasted creating content, which quite frankly, often doesn't see the light of day. And your DAM has a big role to play in this. Now, some of you on this call, I would imagine most of you are going to be familiar with this high-level overview of an asset life cycle. Your brand teams are certainly going to be familiar with it. Now, this slide provides a super high-level overview of the asset from its creation through to publishing on social channels, on e-commerce, etc. Now, most modern DAMs can manage each one of these stages, not only centralizing and organizing your content, of course, but also providing integration with creative technologies, workflows for approving and proofing, built-in rights management, and the ability to publish content from directly within the DAM. Now, managing your assets out of one platform is great, but that doesn't guarantee productivity or performance gains, right? So for that, you need to start looking at the data that your DAM is hopefully providing to answer some of the questions that your brand teams are looking for. So for example, timing is everything when it comes to brand campaigns being launched. So understanding how long it takes to find content and get it approved is really important. Equally as important is understanding what content is being used and where, which of course is a big component of content reuse. Now, from a performance perspective, brands want to know of all the content that is being created, what is performing the best and on which channel. And if the content that we've currently published has been optimized based on historical performance. So this all sounds good in theory, but let's talk about the practicalities of it all. And Shelley, I want to bring you into the discussion and fire some questions at you. So let's start at the beginning. As a DAM manager, how do you even align yourself with your brand and marketing teams who maybe don't sit in the same team or in the same department? And how do you approach them on something like this? And what does collaboration look like at Brown Forman?
Thanks, Mike. That's a great question. I am lucky in that I've been with Brown Forman for quite some time and been managing digital assets for quite some time. So we've worked really hard to create partnerships with our brand teams. We really consider it more of a partnership. Um, we work with our teams to make sure that we have all of their content, their current content, everything that their agencies may be creating, and that we have it available in the dam so that it can be shared globally. So we really consider that partnership and those relationships with our brand and marketing teams are very important.
And how do you kick that off? Is that something that you kind of went to your marketing team and said, "Hey, I think we can be getting more data insights from the dam"? Is it something they approached you for? "Hey, we've got this problem." And how often do you sort of collaborate? Is it a daily thing, weekly, monthly?
Yeah, so we've sort of built those relationships and that timing up over time. It's evolved, but currently we try to meet with our brand teams on every 3 to 4 months. And we actually review all of their content within the dam, make sure that we have everything that we should have, see if there's any content that needs to be retired or removed that they no longer want people using. Um, so we do have those touch points that we have specific meetings set up every 3 to 4 months. Along with that, the communication between our brand teams and my team happens outside of those meetings as well. So if they're launching a new creative campaign or changing a package, we might need to meet more frequently than those set 3 to 4 month timeframes.
Gotcha. So like a seasonal campaign or something like that. That makes sense. You've kind of alluded to it a little bit, but how are the brand teams using your dam today? And rather than, although I think it's going to be interesting for folks in terms of the types of assets that they're housing in there, what are their objectives, sort of high level objectives of the content in your dam?
So high level, our high level objectives with the content in the dam is to make sure that we're supporting, our brand growth framework. We want to make sure that as our brands are developing new creative, we want to make sure that it gets out to all markets and gets leveraged and repurposed and reused. So we sort of lead with that globally led, locally infused um, mantra, and that we want our global teams lead with the creative, but we want that to be available to all of our local teams so they can take it and localize it, change language, change legal information that might need to be on that content.
Gotcha. So obviously, I mean, you work with, I assume most, if not all, of the brands that you have are global. For some of the folks that are thinking about or being asked to support global brands, what are some of the things that trip you up, or things that you need to be wary of? Perhaps focusing, going from the regional focus or one particular geography to global or worldwide.
So one of the important things that we've done, again, it's all about building those relationships. So, the way Brown Forman is, we have many agencies that work on our brands, and we have several, global agencies. So we try to make sure we also have the relationships with those agencies so that we can make sure we're getting the content as it's being created, so that it's there in a timely manner and can be used and repurposed as it's needed. The content within our dam, I didn't really touch on that much, but we have everything within the system from brand identity, distinctive assets such as logos, key photography, key visuals, all the way down to above the line and below the line materials. So anything needed from advertising to print materials. We have all the high res creative, so it's all the editable files so that they can be taken and reused and repurposed.
Gotcha. So you're creating the master files, and then I assume you're working with sort of local agencies to localize the content, add any sort of regional specific verbiage that they need to adhere to the local sort of regulations. Is that a fair summary?
Exactly. So our global teams lead with the creative, and then it may need to be taken in, language, translated or legal information that may need to change market by market.
Gotcha. So you mentioned the types of content that you have there. So it seems to be mostly campaign related or product related. So it's either promoting your products, or it's images of the products themselves. So let's connect that a little bit now to the data. So if those are the types of assets that you're housing, what are the types of data that they're looking for around those assets? Is it related more to the productivity side of things, i.e., how long did it take us to create this? Is this content actually being used? Or is the focus more on what's the best image to use to promote this particular bottle of Jack Daniels on Facebook, for example?
Yeah, so for us, the insights are that we want and we're trying to provide to our brand teams are all about the asset performance. So what are people looking at? What are they downloading? And then we're trying to also get to where's it being used and what kind of insights can we provide back to our teams on how that content gets used globally. And in addition, we also want to know what are people not looking at and not downloading and not using, because that can help the brand teams then sort of pivot, remove content that might maybe isn't being used, or make changes or edits that might make that content more useful.
Gotcha. And to clarify, when you say downloaded, you don't mean by the sort of end customer, you mean by the agencies and the various different partners that you work with.
Exactly. So our system, we do have agency partners who have access globally, all of our agency partners, as well as our distributors. In some markets, we do operate on a three-tier distribution model. So sometimes our distributors need access to that content so that their designers or their agencies can also repurpose and reuse content.
Gotcha. So what we do, I have the luxury of speaking to a lot of wonderfully qualified folks like yourself who've been in the DAM space for a long time, and I keep hearing the word reuse come up, the idea of content reuse. So obviously, brand teams are under pressure to not only generate a lot of content, but also generate content that is resonating with their audiences, and then continue to use that content, so they're not sort of reinventing the wheel. How do you think about content reuse within Brown Forman? Is it really just understanding what content's being leveraged, or is it an idea of being able to percolate up that content that is working well?
Yeah, so for us, it's about what content works well. So whether it's an agency creates a drink photo, with Jack Daniels or something. How does that work? Are people using it? Does that resonate with our consumers? It helps sort of direct our brand teams and what works, what doesn't work.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So going on to our next question then, how as a DAM manager are you able to provide those sort of insights? So what's the process that you would go through, as you mentioned, on the productivity side of things, to understand what's working and really understand what's being used? I guess that would be the first protocol from, right, just to see of all the content that you have, what is actually being used and what could potentially be retired.
Exactly. So, as I said, we do work with our teams and we meet with them every 3 to 4 months. So we walk through the content that's in the system, look at what's there, what campaigns they want to focus on, what do they want to remove. In addition, we're also working to pull insights from the dam so that they can see what are people viewing, what are they viewing and downloading, what are they viewing and then not downloading. And we're also trying to add another level of insights to that beyond sort of those common DAM insights that are available. Where is it being used? Did that image make it to Facebook? Did it make it to, did that video go into YouTube? So those are the kind of insights we'd like to expand and be able to offer our brand teams.
Gotcha. And if I'm following, it's because that's difficult to do today, particularly if you're relying on your agencies who are sort of publishing the content for the most part on your behalf. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's a fair insight.
Gotcha. So in addition to the brand teams, who I can totally understand why that would be really interesting for them to go, well, geez, we've spent so much money up creating all of this wonderful content for a seasonal campaign. We want to understand, is this content actually being leveraged by our agencies? And then if it is it actually having the intended purpose, whether that's driving engagement on social, revenue through e-com, et cetera, that is useful. But I also think this is really pertinent quantitative information that your executive teams would want to know about, because we're now starting to tie together content with ROI, potentially even tie it together with media spend, of which you must have an incredible media spend team there and budget there. And also, maybe aspirationally tie it to revenue as well, which I'm sure the executives care about. What recommendations would you give to be able to sort of elevate that data and also ultimately elevate the importance of the dam within that context?
Yeah, of course, the things you're talking about here are ideal. How can we tie, um, you know, all this information together to show how the dam supports our brand growth and brand objectives? So that's an ideal. We're trying to get there. But uh, a- again, you're right, and that would be important to not just the brand at the brand level, but also at the executive level. How are assets performing? How is a creative campaign performing? Those are all great insights that we'd love to be able to provide at that level. We're working to get there.
That's great, and I know we can certainly help you get there. I think I think there's some educational content required as well by the vendors in this damn space. If I'm being truthful, Shelley, I think it's on ourselves and other companies to start elevating the importance of the dam and the role that it can have on those types of metrics that we've been talking about. Because ultimately, content is king. Content pushes brand awareness. It pushes sort of more bottom of the funnel product sales, digital shelf presence, and of course, where does that content reside? What is the only technology that typically touches every part of that asset lifecycle that we talked about a few minutes ago? It's the dam. And I think if we can start to change the narrative around the dam, we can get more exposure on that executive level. So there's probably a few folks who are thinking, this is sort of all well and good. So we're going to align ourselves with the brand and marketing teams. We're going to understand how they're using content and perhaps fill in some of the gaps that they have today in terms of lack of visibility, understanding content use, content reuse. Given that you're sort of going through this process today, what types of advice would you give folks who are just sort of starting out? And I'd love to, because I think we've got about a minute or two left here. You touched briefly about the framework that you have there. If you could just sort of expand on that framework a little bit, that would be great.
Yeah, so the work that we do as dam managers, or how I look at it and how my team looks at it is that we partner. It's a partnership with our brand teams. Um, we partner on solutions needed to support that marketing ecosystem, and all of that supports the growth of our brands and the building of our brands. Um, and as we said, it's not just the system or the software or even the assets within. It's building that relationship and those relationships with the brand teams, our agencies, and our users around the world.
And tell me a little bit about the framework. So this is an internal thing, right? But the framework really sort of encapsulates everything that you've just talked about.
Yeah. So our brand growth framework, it's all about supporting that, and supporting, our do consumers think about our brands? Do they think about our brands at the moment of purchase? How do those assets help support that? Also, it's about sort of that prominence and visibility in the marketplace. You know, are we on that menu card at that restaurant? Are we on that case display within the retail space? You know, on as far as e-commerce, are we, you know, there and present on these e-commerce sites so that people can purchase our products? So it's about that growth and supporting that growth and how we support that with the DAM and sharing our digital assets.
Superb. Shelley, we are up at time. I know that you and I could talk a lot longer than 20 minutes about this. I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us. And I appreciate everybody who also joined us from the Henry Stewart community. If you would love to learn a little bit more about Tenovos, I'd say please visit our virtual booth, which is in the Henry Stewart platform. And we delve a little bit deeper in data. We've got a few of our experts standing by if you have any questions. But big thank you, Shelley. Always appreciate our time together. And thank you, Henry Stewart, for letting us have this quick chat.
Thanks, Mike.